Hello, this short recording is on the powers of the U.S. Supreme Court. Please make sure that you've turned to the correct page in your resource book, and we'll get started. So as we said, this is how the Supreme Court influences laws and politics, how it uses its powers to influence laws and politics. In other words, if it's influencing laws and politics, then it's influencing public policy. You'll remember we've talked about public policy a number of times before. This is yet another group, the U.S. Supreme Court, that can influence public policy, how the government tries to solve the country's problems. There are two main ways that the Supreme Court can influence public policy and can use its powers. One is through the idea of judicial review, and the other is through interpreting laws. We're going to talk about judicial review first. Judicial review is also known as declaring laws unconstitutional. This is the power to say whether any national, state, or local law or government action goes against the Constitution. So, power to say whether any federal, state, or local law or government action goes against the Constitution. In other words, it's something that clearly contradicts what the Constitution says. It could be something that tries to prohibit or stop something that the Constitution says, or it could be something that tries to allow what the Constitution clearly says cannot happen. Any law that goes against the Constitution can be nullified or canceled by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can say this is unconstitutional, and it basically means that the law never happened. It doesn't exist. It can no longer be enforced by the executive branch. This was established in the court case of Marbury versus Madison, which took place way back in 1803. And you'll be finding more out about the court case of Marbury versus Madison in a little bit. Judicial review is based on three major ideas. First, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That means that all laws, all treaties, all actions of the president have to agree with the Constitution. Number two, if there is a conflict between the Constitution and any other law, it's the Constitution that rules. So, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, anything that goes against it has to go away. And number three, the judicial branch has a duty to uphold the Constitution. The court case of Marbury versus Madison that we mentioned earlier clearly established that it's the job of the judicial branch, not the executive, not the legislative, to uphold and protect the Constitution and make sure that we're always keeping a consistent meaning and making sure that it is being obeyed by the other branches. Obviously, this then, down at the bottom, allows the Supreme Court to check the other branches. It's the only check that the Supreme Court has. They can declare laws unconstitutional, and they can declare presidential actions unconstitutional. So that's judicial review. The other power of the Supreme Court is what's called interpreting laws. You'll remember that as we've talked about the judicial branch, we've said that its main job is to interpret laws, but we haven't gone into much depth about what it means. Well, when Congress makes the laws, it often uses very general language. It will say, for example, that we need to spend money in a certain area. We need to enforce a law that prevents people from doing something. But it doesn't go down into all the details. It doesn't go into all the situations that could possibly occur. So it's up to the Supreme Court to determine what the laws mean in specific situations. When a situation comes up that Congress hasn't anticipated or maybe is too specific from what Congress thought about, then the Supreme Court will step in and it will interpret that law and state what it means. So, that's the powers of the U.S. Supreme Court. They are judicial review and interpreting laws. Thanks for listening.